So in here, we have an outside collaborator in our repository. Besides working with teams, which we'll do very soon, we can actually also use another way to give people access to our repository. This way is actually also described down here in this search bar. Find a team, organization member, or outside collaborator. Teams, as I said, covered soon. Outside collaborator, understood, hopefully. But what about this organization member here? Well, for this purpose, and as you're working with 2 accounts here only, I'll first get rid of our outside collaborator right here. So let's delete this by clicking onto this symbol. And let's remove this member now from the repository. With that, we are back where we were. So no, team members, collaborators, or individual members. But if we now go to our organization in general, so up here, so to the account basically, there we can find the repositories. We know about these already. We know the settings. But what about this people tab here, this people ribbon? Well, let's explore this by clicking onto it. And in there we see, first that myself as creator of this organization as part of my personal user account. I'm obviously the owner of this organization, which is great. But I can also add additional members or invite additional members in here, this option right here. You can also see that the outside collaborators option, this one would also be in here. I just wanted to make sure that we explore all the different parts of the GitHub interface. Therefore, I use this option now after exploring the other one. So let's go to members now, and let's now invite a member, by clicking onto the corresponding button. There we can now again, search for specific members. I'll again use the Manu Lawrence account, and please don't use this account because otherwise, I'll get plenty of invitations. So please don't do this. So I'll add myself now in the other account as member, and let's now send the invite. And there, in contrast to the outside collaborators, we have other options we can choose here. As described, we can define the appropriate role inside the organization of the person we want to invite. We have 2 options down here. One role would be the owner role down here. That's the role I as creator of the organization have. And this generally refers to the full administrative rights and also to access to all repositories which are part of this organization. Typically, if you're closely working together with somebody else, for example, if your organization is a company and both of the, people in charge of the company should have access, then owner might be the right choice. Typically, the member role is a more often used role right here. Therefore, we will now go with member and send the invitation to the hopefully new member. With that, we have a pending invitation right here. And as also shown previously, I'll now go to my emails in the other account and click onto the link in there and then see what is displayed in the invitation to this account. So here we are again. I now opened the invite, and now in contrast to our previous collaboration options, we now get an invitation to the organization. That's an important difference. We are no collaborator now. We are part of the organization, and I would like to join this organization now. This is it. And now inside this organization, we see that we don't have any public repositories, but here in the repositories part, I now have access to this repository we created in there. The question now is, which type of access do I have now as organization member? Let's go back to the owner account of the organization for that purpose. We can now reload this again to see that we have no pending invitations and that our organization now in here has 2 members, 1 owner, myself here, and we have the Manu Lawrence account I just added. That's a typical member. Over here, we now have plenty of options to define the specific role of this member of the organization. If we click onto it, we see we can manage or change the role. We'll explore this in a few seconds. We can remove that person from the organization, or we can convert the role from a member to an outside collaborator. We had a very close look at collaborators, therefore I'll not do this, but instead click onto Manage here. In there, you can now find something, well, hopefully not too surprising for you. The access type this member has is read-only on this repository. You remember that we had a look at the repository permissions of members. These did not well apply for the outside collaborators, but here, of course, these work. If I would go to Manage Access here, for example, then this here looks a bit strange at first sight, but generally you can see that we have read access only as membership privilege. We don't have write or admin access. If I would go to Edit here, then I'm finally back in the option menu that we had a look at earlier. We could alternatively access these, by the way, if we go back here to the organization, then go to the organization settings, and then go to member privileges. So as you see, that's the, well, other option where you can find this menu. If we once again go to the GitHub course organization and then to the people tab, this is where we accessed it previously. So I just want to make sure that you become comfortable with the GitHub interface. It can be a bit confusing when getting started, but generally I think it's quite intuitive after a while. Nevertheless, with the member access we have now to this project, and you remember we still cloned this project, if I would now go back to my account, so to the Manu Lawrence account, which is now a member of this organization, still with read-only access though. So here I am. This is where we added this test2 text file. If I would now run git pull, it should update the, well, main branch, which is up to date because our push was successful after changing the write for the outside collaborator to write. Now we could add, well, some text here. I am a member now, for example. Save this. Now let's add this and let's create the corresponding commit. Added text as member. And let's commit this. So after clearing it, we can now again run git push. So what's going to happen now? Nothing. Again, the same problem we had before. This means GitHub security, of course, and thankfully works. So what we could do now is to make sure that this specific member is allowed to push to this repository is we could go back to GitHub, change his access rights by clicking onto this gear wheel symbol and go to manage. There, manage access for this specific repository and then edit it right here. There we are back in the account. And now we can say that instead of read access, this member should have write access now. Yes, we want to change this. And if we now go back to VS Code and run git push once again, then hopefully our push should be successful. Now this team member was allowed to successfully push to this branch. However, this is now kind of managing the access for all repositories. If we go back, we see that these are base permissions to the organization's repositories. What if we have multiple repositories in our organization and this specific member should not have access to all our repos? Let's see if we can find a solution for this problem in the next lecture. At the moment, our member of the organization, besides our owner, has access, write access to the repository. Let's now see what happens if we create another repository and if we say that this member should not have write access to this second repository, but to the first one, he should still have access. Well, for this, we go to the organization account, go to repositories, create a new one, and let's call it member read only. Like this, as I said, no description. We'll keep it private, so all the same settings as before. And let's create this repository. And let's also add a new file here. They call it again test read dot text, and let's simply say this is another test. And then let's go down and add a commit, initial commit again, to be in line with our previous commit logic, and let's commit this file. Okay, so very nice. This is now a new repository in our account that we have right here. If we go back to our organization and to people here, we see that this member here is still there, of course. And if we click onto his role, we can, of course, manage this role. We saw this before. And now things become interesting, right? Because now we can see that this member has access to 2 repositories. And at the moment, he or she has access to both of these repositories with write access. Here, it should be read-only though. So if we click onto Manage Access now, we see that we have write access, so no surprise. And if we then go to Edit and change this to read, right here, then you see this will change the permission on 2 repositories. So this doesn't make a difference. This won't help us here. So this doesn't lead us anywhere, of course. So we can only set this option on a general level for all members. But if you think back about the different, collaboration types we have in organizations, outside collaborator, organization member, we also have this team option. Let's explore teams now in a bit more detail, and let's see if we have more granular options to there define which repositories specific team members can have a specific access type to or not.